Check 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2. Check 1 2 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 1 2 1 2. Check 1 2.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the few-minute delay. We got our YouTube stream working. Good afternoon. I would like to call our meeting to order for April 25th, 2022. I want to begin our meeting by recognizing that the Ottawa is located on unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabes host nation. The peoples of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and present have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The Ottawa Police Service Board honor the people and the land of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe Nation. Today, Ottawa is a home to approximately 40,000 First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. Ottawa's Indigenous community is diverse, representing many nations, languages, and customs. The Ottawa Police Service Board honor all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contribution to this land. I want you to know that our meeting continues to be streamed live on YouTube through the City Council channel. I also want to welcome a new face around the table. That's a member, Michael Doucette. Member Doucette joined us last board meeting on Zoom, but today he's here in person. I will give him a couple of minutes to introduce himself to us and to the audience. Member Doucette, maybe you can take a couple of minutes, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Chair. I'm obviously pleased to be here this afternoon. I come to the board with 30 years of experience at with the Federal Public Service. And since retiring from the public service, I've been working in the domain of cybersecurity. I care about policing in Ottawa, and I care about the city of Ottawa. That's been my home for most of my life. And once again, I'm very pleased to be here. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Member Doucette, and welcome to our board. And Member Doucette, as I said, attended the March meeting through Zoom, and he's been appointed by the province. So thank you and welcome, Member Doucette. Also, I want to know that the Member Hanschel is away, unable to attend. However, he will be able to watch us on YouTube. Prior to our public meeting, we held in-camera meeting. The board received an update from the service on upcoming demonstrations, as well as quarterly update from legal service and settlements in the first quarter of 2022. Finally, the board discussed a personal matter. I will now proceed with the confirmation of the agenda. Confirmation of agenda that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed the agenda of 25th April 2022. Is the agenda confirmed? Thank you. Confirmation of minutes, minutes 57 of 28 of March 2022, that the Ottawa Police Service Board confirmed minutes of 57 of 28 March 2022. Are the minutes confirmed? Thank you. Declaration of interest. I don't see none. Public delegation. We have some public delegation registered to speak today. Each delegate has up to 5 minutes to address the board. The list of the delegates on the agenda has been updated since last Wednesday and was originally published. Prior to proceeding with the first registered delegate, I do want to make a few comments on a decorum. At the last meeting, I know emotions were high, as it was the first opportunity members of the public had to speak to the board directly about the convoy. We received some very impassioned delegation and on the topic, and I know it's triggering for many, given the negative impact it had on our residents. For this reason, I provided delegates with some leeway in terms of their presentations. However, as a chair, I am responsible for maintaining decorum in our meetings. Going forward, I will be ensuring all participants in our meetings abided by our procedural guidelines. This includes refraining from using unparliamentary, unoffensive language, as well as making allegations against members of the police service or even member of the police board or staff. It also means focusing your comment on the topic you sign up to speak on. Failure to follow these guidelines would result in your delegation be curtailed. The board has included regular public delegation as part of its business meeting, and these are meant to be respectful and collaborative exchange. I will now call on the first registered delegate, Daily Gauthier. So, I believe the first speaker has canceled. The second speaker we have is Ryan St. John, Financial Status Report and Board Monitoring Requirement Status Report. Is Ryan St. John here? Please have a seat. Good afternoon, Ryan, and you have 5 minutes to address the board.
Up in the inquiry, sorry, can people hear me? Budget-wise, what I'm wondering, I know I don't get direct answers here, but if conversations with the Ontario government and Quebec government about repaying costs at the OPP, OPS, Sûreté, and Outaouais, costs have been, like, has the topic been broached to this point? Is there going to be a public update before the inquiry at the end of 2023? I don't think I'm going to touch much more on the budget. And ultimately, any questions that I'm going to ask in the next second is just whether there's a plan for the upcoming weekend that's driven by fact, driven by lessons learned from the last few weeks. So because the inquiry is not coming out for about a year, we're just looking to be, we would like people to recognize that some changes could be done better, and speaking to the public a bit more may help in light of the fake post that turned out to be real, that there's some conflict about, that's being used in the convoy's favor. So we just want a little more transparency. The chief had a media blitz right before this, so there's some questions that I'm sure were answered that I'm not going to get to. Just some reassurances for the public is what we're looking for. We're wondering if bylaw has been approached to have a more integrated approach. I know that a few more people are going to be taking the transit towards the demonstrations. So are there going to be special constables and red vests at Blair Station, Saint Laurent Station, Tunney's, just the other stations to be able to deal with that situation? And I'm not going to ask about operational details. I'm sure you have that covered, but integrations with other levels, we only really get to speak to you as the citizens. We know that OPP and the RCMP may be involved, but we don't get a chance to speak back. So I know this isn't a back and forth delegation, but if you could update the public in some way, I think you've been doing an okay job so far, but since we have 4 days left, I think a lot of people are concerned. I'm going to list off a few more questions that I had written down. I know it's not back and forth. So just questions about OPP's relationship for the intelligence gathering. Is there a central line for tips that you guys are looking to put out to the public? There seems to be at least one full-time advisor to the convoy. Sorry, advisor is not the right word, but comms outreach guy. Is that public information? Because it cuts both ways too. If you want to talk to the convoy, you can also talk to the public if that's what you're looking for. But we know that you can't share operational details. There's a lot of people that have been nervous about convoy stuff for a couple of weeks and are doing their own freelance stuff. We know that during the convoy, you use some of those amateur channels, but maybe looking for some. Is there a tip line you would like to share to the public? Is that considered evidence, or does that just get ignored because it's not chain of custody stuff? Like, we know you can doctor screenshots, but that's what people are concerned about too. Like that release that they got that seems to be a draft was then shared widely that says, oh, they're going to interrupt us. Like, we got to get ready. They kept repeating peaceful, which is never a great sign when you use that word 10 times in a sentence. So I'm not super concerned about myself. I don't live in Centertown, but for the people that are, we know that some stuff's going to be talked about in camera, but as long as the city councilors are okay with the information that's being portrayed, we know we can't share it. But if you're able to say, okay, we've gotten the in-camera information, we feel comfortable with it, back and forth like that. I think any of my other questions are just going to come off rambly. But if you have any follow-up questions for me, that's great. But if not, I'm going to go sit back down.
Well, let me, before you leave, Ryan, thank you very much for your presentation. And please, next time, be specific. What would you like to ask? We could facilitate your presentation a little bit different. Maybe we could.
Yeah, I did sign up as for budget or number 15, which I think was a budget, as well as a different number. But because of that, I got bumped up as a general delegate. If not, I could have spoken to the specific.
No, that's okay, Ryan. I would like you to stay, first of all, to have a question from Member Leeper, but I would like you to stay till after the chief's verbal report, because some of the question and you ask, you can hear it in the chief's verbal report. Member Leeper, you have a question for Mr. St. John?
I do, and thank you very much, Mr. St. John, for the presentation. It's clear you're concerned about this weekend. Can I just ask you, what are the scenarios in your mind, based on what you've seen in the social media, that you are concerned about that will impact the residents of Ottawa?
The obvious thing is the traffic around the cenotaph, but I'll let other people's deal with that. It's the transit users. They're going to go park at Saint Laurent Station, and as well, there's multiple different people organizing multiple different things. But so people are expected to congregate there. Some of them will be taking transit from there and Tremblay Station. So that's where I would recommend having extra people. As well as they're going to get off at Parliament Station, so having extra people as well. Some people rightly will park at Tunney's because it's the end of the line. That's what the local residents that may choose to join are probably going to do. But we know there was issues with maskless transit travel last time. So is that a lesson learned? Is bylaw going to be out with noise meters? One, people are thinking about the bikes, but two, now people have air horns and electronic air horns that don't, like, they can go to infinity, right? So if you have, bylaw has some of those portable noise meters before there was a threat to their safety, so they weren't always out. Is that kind of enforcement that gets used going to be applied in this case?
So what I've heard from you thus far is noise as a concern in areas where protesters congregate, as well as the potential for disruption on our transit system from people who are not wearing masks. Are there any other scenarios that are of concern to you this weekend?
Most of the people coming probably have decent intent, but there are a few people that have talked about violence, either saying, I'm ex-military and we should stand up. Like, it's vague terms. They're not committing criminal acts, but you know what the intent is. They say we're peacefully 17 times in a sentence, which is the organizer should say, but some people won't. So I just like it to be calm enough. So if there is an incident by, let's say, a few dozen, well, let's say dozen, a few people are a little bit nuts and things get out of hand, the police can still step in. So we're looking for the general safety, because most people are just going to be wrapped in a flag and rah, rah, have a great time. It's the dangerous select few, which is the major concern. Some of them have been training in a weird camp cult paramilitary style in places like Van Cleek Hill, which is out of OPS's jurisdiction, but still of concern, or people coming from Montreal. Again, most people, not the issue. It's setting up a calm enough environment in the right way, because they're going to be distributed, right? They're going to be at Saint Laurent Station congregating. Some people at a different time are going to be showing up at the Cenotaph. Other people are parking on Eagleson. You have your own issues to deal with, but it's dealing with that. And my issue is the continuation. If it goes into Monday, it's a problem. Like, they're going to have fun Saturday and maybe go home. They might be here Sunday, which is concerning, but not illegal. If they're still here Monday, they're here to cause problems. And if things as small as like wheel locks on a motorcycle are going to keep them from getting pushed out of the core on Monday, and that hasn't been planned for, that's the issue. So I know I'm rambling. I've taken up more than 5 minutes. I'm not representing a specific scenario. Like, I could make something up and it would sound scary, but it probably won't happen. But if you need feedback from the citizenship, all the random people that have been obsessed with this online and have been pulling up information that they could share, but if you don't put out a tip line, they can't share that. So you guys can monitor certain accounts. I know you do that as part of your regular course of action, but
Thanks. I think you're going to hear a lot of what the board has heard, and I hope that will provide people who are concerned about this weekend with some comfort. Obviously, there are trust issues, but if you hear a lot of what we've heard, I hope that will help. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you, Member Lieber, and thank you, Mr. St. John. If there's any inquiries from board members? See none. Okay, so we'll go through our consent agenda first, and we'll hold the items we need to hold, and we'll come back to it. So item number 1 is the chair's verbal report, so we'll hold item number 1. Item number 2 is the chief's verbal report, and we're holding the chief's verbal report. Item number 3 is the National Capital Area Crime Stopper semi-annual report, and I believe Mr. McMullen with us to, oh yes, so Richard here to give us, so we'll hold item number 3 after the chief, because I know Richard wants to hear the chief's report. Item number 4 is appointment to the boards and committees. So we have a report came from the executive director, and that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the following appointment to committees. And as we all know, each committee will pick their own chair at their first meeting. Now, is there's any concern? Do I have to read them? Who's who? Or you have them all on the front of you? So are we good to carry the appointments the way they are? I see everybody nod. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. And thank you for taking on extra work with committees, and Member Hansel will get extra because he's not in the meeting today. So that's what happened when you missed. Item number 5, Igniting the Spirit Gala fundraising event, and for the Wabano Center. I think some of us old and new on the board would know the board always support the Ignite the Spirit. That's a gala fundraising for the Wabano Center, helping in many ways. The Wabano Center does a great job in our community, whether with the violent against women or child poverty or mental health, and the list goes on and on. So there's a request for support for purchase of a table. If the board's approved, we can purchase a table, then the executive director will reach out to you or Hannah and ask who would like to attend. And in the past practice, the priority goes to board member, after board member, staff, or board partners. So item number 5 is to approve the purchase of a table at the gala at the cost $3,500. Is this item approved? Approved, thank you. And our staff will get in touch with the board members at later on time. Item number 6, approval of a new justification for critical special constable appointment, Ottawa Police Service. This is from the Chief's Office, Chief's report, that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the clerical special constable justification as submitted. This will facilitate the ability of the Ottawa Police Service, OPS, court liaison section to serve court process on individuals and swear to all OPS court information as common informant in the province of Ontario. So this is a special constable. Is the item carried?
Can you hold that one, please?
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
Is it a quick question you want to ask now, or is it?
I read the report a couple of times,
Okay.
and I'm not sure what exactly it is that these constables will be doing. I'm just wondering if I don't see any red flags, but
Okay.
some English or some more lay language explanation of what it is.
Well, I'm glad you asked this here, because I asked privately to Krista as well. So, Chief, maybe you want to elaborate on quickly,
Yeah,
or
thank
you want to
you.
hold it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Member Leeper for the question. So in order to be able to swear information, you need to be a peace officer. And in order to be a peace officer, you have to be sworn in as either a police officer or a special constable under the current legislation as it sits. This is allowing members to be sworn in so that they actually they're an officer of the court and could go before the courts and swear to information. So it's an official capacity. It's an official requirement of us to enable people to swear informations.
And sorry, swear informations.
So that's a very, yes, okay.
Thank you.
Swearing information. So anytime that there is, thank you for the clarification sought. Anytime that there is a charge that's laid before the courts, it's the actual charge is started by what's called an information. That information lays out the person who's committed the alleged offense, the court date, any specifics around that person, the allegations of the offense, as well as the criminal code violation that's existed. That document that starts the whole process is called an information, and it needs to be sworn to by an officer of the court. This will allow members who weren't previously sworn in under the criminal code to be able to be sworn in so that they can actually start that process.
Concise and clear. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, and thank you for asking the question, Jeff. On the item, okay, thank you. Item number 7 is pre-appointment of Special Constable OC Transpo. Also, Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the pre-appointment of OC Transpo employee listed in a document 1 as a special constable pursuant to section 53 of the Police Service Act, PSA, and in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment form. And that's basically straightforward special constable for OC Transpo. Is on the item carried? Thank you. Item number 8, appointment of Special Constable, Ottawa Police Service. Chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board approved the appointment of the Ottawa Police Service Board OPS employee listed in document 1 as a special constable pursuant to section 53 of the Police Service Act PSA and in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the attached approval of appointment forms. Did this item carry? Okay, thank you. Item number 9 is a sworn promotion process 2021 annual report. I will behold this item because I have a question from member Henschel who had asked me to present the question on his behalf. So we're going to hold item number 9. Item number 10 is the report on an SIU investigation that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is this item received? See? Thank you. Item number 11 is financial status report, first quarter 2022, that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. On the item received? Hold. Okay, so number 11 is hold, Jeff. Okay. Item number 12 is complaints report, Part 5, Police Service Act, first quarter, that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is item 12 received? Hold. Okay. Jeff again. Okay, item number 13 is workplace injury, illness, and incident 2021 annual report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is the workplace injury report received? Quick question, go ahead.
I am just curious, how many workplace injuries are slips and falls? Because that's a fairly significant portion of the workplace injuries. How many of those are on the city's icy sidewalks? And if you don't have an answer, I can put that in an informal inquiry.
Chief?
Yep, thank you.
Go
So I
ahead.
can tell you right off the bat, off the top, we don't have an answer immediately available here, but it's something we can look into and report back.
Thanks, I'm just curious.
Okay, member Curry?
I'm glad that was just held for a second. Maybe another quick question. You know, there seems to be a lot going into trying to reduce those numbers. And certainly in other organizations I've worked with, there's a lot of work done to try to reduce these numbers, but the numbers don't seem to be reducing. And so I'm just wondering if there's any other explanation, because it's not for, it seems a lack of trying, but there seems to be quite a lot of workplace injuries.
Do you want me to answer now, Mr.
Sure,
Chair?
go ahead,
Yep.
please.
So there is a lot of effort put into it. And I actually think it's very good effort, and it's effort we should be investing. I do believe that all of the steps we are taking and all of the investments we are putting in that area, focused in that area, will pay longer run dividends. I think all of the investments in our employee wellness will not have an immediate turnaround, but you'll see a longer, more staged return of people to work once they're healthy, to circumstances that are extremely much more healthy for them. So we'll continue to focus on that area. I do agree the numbers do continue to increase, but that I think that is an indicator for us. We need to double down even more and invest in the in health and wellness of our members and make sure that they are working in an environment that's safe and have the investments they need when they do have any sort of challenges that we can help support them in.
Thank you for that, Chief. And I will say that I don't, I can imagine that one of the reasons may be that people feel safer to come forward and say that they've been injured, you know, that there is an issue. So, you know, there is that phenomena as well, that they start to think, well, people do care and people are asking, and maybe I wouldn't have reported in the past, but I will now. The only other thing I will say is that in that report, there's a comment about it's difficult to find another industry where it's similar, so you can look at similar statistics. And I would say that the nursing profession has a lot of similarities. You know, when you think about, there are so many injuries and some violent incidences as well, where nurses and doctors, medical staff, hospital staff are injured. So it would be interesting, I think, for you to look further afield if you haven't thought about that already. Thanks.
So thank you for that. We'll actually take that and we'll absolutely take that under advisement. I can tell you the author of that report is a registered nurse and does work in that field. So I know has good connections, and we'll make sure if it is an appropriate comparison that we'll start to embed it in the report.
Thank you, Chief. And on the item 13, receive. Okay, item number 14 is legal service status, first quarter 2022. On the item received. Item number 15, the board monitoring requirement status report, first quarter 2022, and that's report from the executive director that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. So we're up to date on this item receive. Item number 16 is outstanding board inquiries in motion, April 22, executive director. Also that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is the item received? Item number 17 is the letters of commendation, and that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is the item received? So we'll go back to our first held item, and that's the chair's report. Let me begin by starting with a somewhat little bit of bad news. If the passing of a professor, Andrew Graham. I personally got to know Professor Graham from the early 2000s when I was still through orientation with the Police Service Board, and Mr. Graham was contracted by the province to teach police governance. So I would like to begin my verbal report by taking a brief moment to acknowledge the passing of Professor Andrew Graham of Queen's University. Mr. Graham was an expert thought leader on police and governance. He has supported our board and numerous others across the country for many years in terms of our oversight and governance responsibility. And I want to remember him also working with me on the Ontario Association of Police Board. He was a teacher, a mentor, an author, a role model, and a friend to many of us. He will be greatly missed. Police Week, since this is the last board meeting before the Police Week, which runs from May 15 to 21, I would like to take a moment to wish all members of the Ottawa Police Service a very happy and safe Police Week. This year's theme is Your Police Service Helping Build Safer Community. It has been a challenge times for police services across the country, and particularly here in Ottawa. However, Police Week is an opportunity to celebrate everything our sworn and civilian members do support of the community safety. I'm also very happy to see some in-person event will be able to resume this year, and I would invite all our board members try to join those events if they happen to be around your community. Review by the AG, the Auditor General. I want to provide you an update on the motion passed by the board at our last meeting to invite the Auditor General to lead a review onto the OPS response to the unlawful demonstrations early this year. The Auditor General has accepted our invitation to perform this engagement under her powers. She has noted the request as of significant magnitude. However, she will take the necessary time to perform a thorough audit. The scope is yet to be defined. However, once in her office will review the skill set required for the work to perform and obtain the necessary expertise. On behalf of the board, I would like to convey our gratitude to the AG for taking on this important audit, and I look forward to the results. Also, in speaking with the other general, I offer her if she can speak with all board members. I believe she did send a meeting request with you, and I hope you will find the time to speak with her as soon as you can, because we need to move forward with her, as she called it, her inquiries, taking the result. The rolling tender, this coming week, we are expecting a demonstration consisting of a convoy of bikers, rolling tender. I know the chief will be speaking to this as a part of his verbal report. I have spoken to the chief. Both the board and the service understand the hurt in our community. The right to protest will always be protected. The chief and the city have been clear that vehicles-based protest will not be allowed. I support this decision. The board have received briefing on the services plan to manage this demonstration and ensure public safety. Councillors representing impact area have also been briefed. The service has made it clear to the board that their priority is ensuring the safety of all involved. People have the right to lawful and peaceful demonstrations, but they do not have the right to intimidate, threaten, or assault our community. The police service will have safety and security measures in place. This concludes my verbal report. If there's no question, we can receive this report. So that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. So received, thank you. And now I'll turn it to the chief for his verbal report. Chief Bell.
Thank you very much, Chair Al-Shantiri, and good afternoon to the chair and members of the board. Chair Al-Shantiri, I'd like to share in your congratulations you provided to Member Doucette. We had an opportunity to speak earlier today, and I look forward to working with you and the rest of the board as we move ahead. So I want to begin my verbal report with some information on our preparations for the Rolling Thunder event scheduled for this coming weekend. We've heard the concerns of the community. We know there's a great deal of hurt and sensitivity and a need for healing, especially in the downtown core. This has been a major factor in our planning as we've moved ahead. We will not allow for unsafe or unlawful conditions that could lead to another unlawful protest as seen in February. The right to lawful and peaceful demonstrations will always be protected by our service and its members. Just this past weekend, we saw 2 protests in our core. They were peaceful and lawful, and we thank the organizers and participants. Along with those rights, we all have responsibilities, and there is a critical role in our society for the police to preserve the peace. It is important that we are clear with everyone on what they can expect in the coming days. The individuals associated with this event are expected to arrive on Friday with many of the main activities occurring through Saturday. It is too early to provide information on expected numbers, but we will update as the week moves on. The joint position of the Ottawa Police Service and the City of Ottawa is that no motor vehicle protests, rallies, or events will be allowed in the designated downtown areas. This includes areas near and around Parliament Hill and the National War Memorial and applies to all demonstrations, rallies, and events. Residents and businesses should expect traffic delays. Areas may be restricted, to pedestrian-only zones in the core to maintain public safety. We are also aware of a site in the rural area of Eagleson Road where some Rolling Thunder participants are gathering this weekend. This area will also see an increased police presence and possible traffic delays. We're working with our city partners to develop a complete traffic plan that will manage vehicular traffic and ensure the safe movement of pedestrians. Controlled intersections, road closures, vehicle towing, and ticketing will be part of the enforcement strategy to support public safety. I've spoken to the OPP commissioner and we will receive significant additional resources from multiple partner agencies, including the Ontario Provincial Police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. The focus of those resources will be on public safety, maintaining the right to protest, and enforcing all applicable laws. I want to be clear with both organizers and participants. You will be held accountable for your actions before, during, and after the events. We continue to monitor online and open source commentary relating to all events. Threatening or intimidating behaviors will be addressed with all appropriate enforcement actions. Investigative teams, including our hate crime unit, are in place, focused on gathering evidence and laying charges where applicable. The display of symbols of hate, like swastikas, have and will result in charges. The targeting of any community event will result in a police and enforcement response. As we do with all events, we've reached out to the Rolling Thunder organizers to ensure we understand their plans. We do this for every event, from a football game to rallies to events like we're seeing through this weekend. This is never meant to support any specific cause, but to ensure that there are clear lines of communication and that public safety issues are addressed. The role of police is to remain impartial, promote public safety, and enforce relevant legislation. We're also reaching out to individuals and groups who plan to attend to express their opposition to this event to understand their plans as well. We continue to finalize our plans to ensure this event is peaceful, lawful, and orderly. I will continue to update the public and the board in the days coming ahead. I want to update you on some key issues we are seeing citywide since the start of the new year. The number of shootings in our city has declined by nearly 40%, with about 10 fewer compared to this time last year. From the 14 shootings in 2022, 7 people have been injured with 1 fatality. Our officers have seized nearly 30 crime guns to date in 2022, compared to a total of 80 guns recovered by police over all of 2021. The city continues to see a spike in opioid use, with police responding to nearly 200 calls for overdose since the start of the year. In 30 separate incidents, our officers have used Narcan to save the lives of people in distress. Sadly, opioid use has claimed over 30 lives this year so far in our city. We also continue to see an increase in hate-motivated incident reports. So far in 2022, we've received 60 such reports, which is up 10% from last year. 3 people have received warnings and another 3 people have been formally charged. Investigations into all incidents are ongoing, including those involving the display of a swastika flag and other hate-motivated incidents that occurred during the illegal protests in February. We continue to encourage people to file reports so that our officers can investigate and resolve any hate-motivated incidents by charging those responsible. Our human trafficking unit continues to do exceptional work in identifying those who would target vulnerable residents in our city. Last week, it concluded Project Exodus, which was part of a nearly year-long investigation involving female victims, 3 of whom were under the age of 18 at the time that the incidents occurred. 4 men were charged with criminal offenses related to trafficking and sexual assault, and we are asking for any other victims to please come forward. Our human trafficking unit is focused on empowering survivors and victims of sexual and/or labor exploitation to break their cycle of abuse. The addition of a victim support specialist has helped the unit connect those impacted with an extensive network of external agencies and support. Last Monday, our officers responded to a call from a social worker about a client who was in crisis. The man had armed himself with a knife and had barricaded himself in his home, refusing to go to hospital for help. Our frontline patrol, in coordination with our tactical unit and Ottawa Police Service negotiators, talked with the man and listened to his story, finally getting to come out of his home and relinquish the knife. He was later taken to hospital. These are the types of calls that our officers respond to every day. It is our officers' ability to be patient and compassionate and to hear the person's story that leaves the greatest impact. We know that we need to develop alternative solutions to those in mental health crisis, to divert them away from the criminal justice system and to get them the supports that they need. And we are actively working with our community partners, including the Guiding Council, from the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan to develop a plan that will meet exactly those needs. Every day, the Ottawa Police Service receives emails from the public telling us about how the police were during the challenging times that they themselves or their families faced. That's our role as a police service, being someone you can call when you need help the most. Here's an example of one email. I am severely handicapped after the removal of a brain tumor and have experienced memory and brain function loss. After a particularly difficult day, Constables Raymond Corey and Paul Askin responded to my call for help. They were very, very nice and stayed with me for a long time to make sure I was okay. Thank you so much for the training you give these guys. It's very good and it helped me a lot. Thank you, and that concludes my reports. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief. Any question on the Chief's report? Member Leeper?
Thank you very much, Chair. So I have a number of questions on this weekend, obviously. I think first I will just ask a question based on the intervention by Mr. St. Jean with respect to the potential for disruption on transit. What is the plan, or what can you share with us on that respect? Because I certainly share that, having Tunney's pasture in my ward.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So what I can advise you is we actively work with our city partners, including OC Transpo and OC Transpo Security. We have raised concerns. They have raised concerns. And as part of the planning, we've taken into account the fact that there could be challenges or disruptions, and OC Transpo is looking at plans on how to properly respond to those potential issues.
Okay. I know there's probably not a lot that you can share with me at this point in terms of the precise plans, but it is a priority for me. And Mr. St. Jean also raised an interesting point with respect to sharing information with police. I'm in receipt of some, very detailed documents that I would call crowdsourced intelligence from people who've been combing social media and the internet. How can people share information with you if they think they have something that would be of use?
Yeah, so it's a very good question. One I'm actually very happy you asked, so thank you. What I can say is that there's a couple different avenues that people can relay information to us. One of them is through our website there's a portal or a link to, it's called info@ottawapolice.ca. So it's a web-based application where people can click on our external internet access website and provide the information there. It will be received, triaged by members, and forwarded on to the appropriate place for us to look and assess and manage. The other area that people can always go to, and I like to remind them, and we're getting a presentation today, but is through Crime Stoppers, which is a very good avenue to provide anonymous information for people that are concerned. So there are a couple different mechanisms and ways to get into our organization, and we encourage people to utilize them and use them so that we can receive all of that information.
Will there be a counselor liaison function again?
Yes, absolutely. So we are assigning one of the members of my team to act as a counselor liaison. We're just in the process of identifying that person, and that name will be provided to the counselors shortly.
Now, one of the things that has become clear through some of the materials that people are sharing with me is that we can't just speak about the organizers of this event. There is a group of motorcycle riding veterans who may be describing plans to you. How aware are you of other groups who may not be sticking to the main group's plans?
So we'd be considerably concerned about that. What we do know is there is a core group, but there are other people that are indicating their intentions to attend Ottawa this weekend. I can tell you that all of those eventualities, all of those different circumstances have been taken into account in our planning process. And we believe we've come up with a plan that adequately identifies potential risks, puts the resourcing behind it to actually respond to them, and deploys our members in a way that will allow us to keep the streets of our city safe.
I think there's a significant concern on the part of residents, and I share it to a certain extent, that the motorcycle-based veterans convoy is a Trojan horse with multiple groups who have different objectives coming in with that group with different aims and different tactics.
So we continue to work actively with our intelligence partners between the RCMP, the Ontario Provincial Police, CSIS, other local agencies to gather and cull through the information we have. All of that intelligence information is worked into our planning, and we sit believing that we actually are confident that we have a good plan that is properly resourced in order to manage the safety concerns through the weekend.
There is, we had some discussion previously, and it's something that I think we've talked about a couple of times now with respect to the different impacts of what this protest might have. There is a vehicle-based process that intends to roll through. There is a wreath lane ceremony that we know about. But I think a lot of us, particularly in the downtown area, are concerned that large numbers of hangers-on are going to want to associate themselves with what those on motorcycles are doing and create significant disruption in any part of the city that is open to them to access by either motor vehicle or on foot. And I think what a lot of residents want to hear is that you're aware of that potential and are planning for it.
So where I'll start with that is sharing the concerns of our community, because I do share them. We are a tired city. We've had too much of this type of activity in and around and through our streets, particularly in the downtown core. Many of the interactions, much of the activity has caused harm to our community. That fact has been taken into account in every step of our planning as we've moved ahead. We are planning for several different series of eventualities or potential circumstances that could exist. It's not a one-size-fits-all plan. We know we have to be nimble and adaptive, and we have to do that so that we can take into account consideration of the concern of our citizens so that we can protect the streets that they took back at the end of February to make sure that that doesn't occur again. Thank you.
Councillor Fleury is in attendance this afternoon. He's not a member of the board. I think what Councillor Fleury would like to make sure the police service is keeping in mind is some kind of reciprocity of treatment such that impacts from this weekend's event don't impact disproportionately on, for example, east of the Rideau Canal versus protection provided west. Can you speak to the potential for some regional disparity in terms of the levels of protection given to the community?
So I've had several conversations with Councillor Fleury and absolutely appreciate his input and concern for his residents. I share those concerns as I indicated. I don't think that we are forsaking one community for another geographical area. I think what you're seeing we've identified is a plan that best addresses the safety concerns we've identified, best addresses our obligations to allow for foot-based protests and demonstrations while effectively moves through the city a group of people who are looking to come in and show support for the monument. So I think we've tried to balance all of those concerns. The concerns of the communities that Councillor Fleury represents are absolutely front of mind. The safety concerns that have been identified by the councillor are ones that we have taken into account and are part of the reason that we've actually identified and started to do the planning that we've done. We'll continue to refine our plan. We'll continue to talk to the councillor as the week goes through, but I don't ever want anyone to think that one area of the city has been forsaken for another, because that absolutely is not the case. I know that through the Convoy, the Market, Lower Town, Sandy Hill, Vanier to an extent was absolutely impacted by the activities. We're well aware of that, and our plan does look at managing and mitigating any potential in those communities.
I can only imagine being the restaurateur at the corner of Sussex and Rideau, for example, and what she's probably going through right now in terms of worry about what this weekend is going to look like. So we want to make sure that we've got that that larger geography in mind. Chair, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you, Member Leaper. Okay, we'll start with the Vice Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and then Member Curry. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chief, for that description in terms of the communities outside of the center core. Are you working with the BIAs, for instance? I mean, I think you did mention it earlier on that this was a group that you were communicating with, and community associations to give as much as a heads up or detailed ways in which that they should deal with this situation.
So what I can tell you is we're actually, as broadly as we can, providing information around this. We're using our partnership and action group. We're using this board, the media, trying to leverage city councilors in order to be able to get as much information out as we can around it, because we think that is very important. Specifically to the business improvement agencies, I can let you know that we are accessing them, we are leveraging them, and we are trying to provide as much information as we can on what will occur through the weekend. And we're trying to take into account in our planning the way to lessen the impact on those businesses in those areas, because we know how hard hit they have been through previous convoys, previous occupations of our streets. So they are front and center in our mind and in our planning, as is the residents of those areas from a community safety and well-being perspective. So we are reaching out, we are having conversations, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you, Member Curry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of conversations we had earlier that I think are valuable to have again, where the public can hear them. Some of the questions we were getting were around the word escort, and that it seemed like, an escort was as if we were welcoming people like we would welcome, royalty, and we would escort them through. And I wondered, you had an excellent comment earlier about that use of the word, and maybe we need to use a different word, but I thought it would be helpful to have a comment on that, what escorting people really means through a city.
Yeah, so I do think it's important that we parse through the terminology. It's a common term in police language. So we will find the most appropriate term to use. What I do think is important in it is that people realize our responsibility is to public safety and community safety. And when we have used the term escort, it is to most efficiently, effectively, and safely move groups of vehicles through our city with the minimal amount of impact. That is the terminology we have used for escort. It is not in the term of that they're getting preferential treatment, that we're trying to highlight the cause that they're here for. It is, in fact, for us to try and as minimally and least invasively move that group through our city so they don't have the impacts that they could on our community.
Thank you for that. I think that is important to clarify. The other comment the other conversation we had was around whether we really understand why this group is coming. It sounds like they're wanting to make sure that they can pay respect to a monument. We don't know that they'll actually get that close to that monument. It's hard to know how this will all go. But do we have any other understanding when you think about people that join in for a cause? Do we understand why they are coming in the first place in our conversations with the group that's coming?
So the group that's coming in our discussions and in much of their social media, part of the group that's coming has identified the need to attend the war monument and reconsecrate it by laying a wreath and undo the damage that may have been done, they feel may have been done to it during the convoy and the removal of that illegal occupation. one of the interesting, challenging things for policing that we've seen over the last number of months is as groups have attended our city and other cities, there seems to not be one central focus or singular objective to them. There are many different groups that come and congregate at the same time. So to identify a reason that people will amass in the city this weekend has been extremely challenging for us. We know some of the reasons, like I just explained, but we continue to look at motivations and tactics that have been used by the group so we can be best prepared to respond and create a safe environment for everyone.
Okay, thank you. I can appreciate how difficult that is with such large numbers. The one last thing I would say now is that the other comments I'm seeing a lot in the communications we're getting as counselors anyways, is that people are concerned about the noise. Motorcycles can be quite noisy and also the pollution from the exhaust in high numbers. I mean, we've had Ride for Dad. There's all kinds of rides we've had before, but that is a concern. And I think people are asking, what laws or bylaws do we have? Who governs that if that's allowed to have such a loud noise? Because we have honking. I think we talked about there's other ways to make a lot of noise as well. And what our thoughts are on that. And I maybe that question can go to Mr. White, but I'm not sure who has the best answer.
Mr. Chair, I can certainly start. There are a number of laws that are in place in that regard. Laws under the Highway Traffic Act with respect to vehicles, provincial legislation with respect to things like emission standards. Generally speaking, and I obviously defer to OPS, but emission standards are generally an issue for the ministry. I would note that the city's own injunction remains in place with respect to noise. So its noise bylaws are continuously in effect, and the city's injunction continues in effect in that regard.
Good. I think I'll leave it for there, but I'm glad we're having this conversation. That some of it we had before, that some of it should be in public. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Member Curry. Member Fakrani.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chief Bell, the one question I have is if you can enlighten us with sort of your thinking on those who may oppose, the citizens who may come out and oppose the Rolling Thunder that's coming out this weekend. What planning is going ahead, or what's your planning on that, please?
So it's an area that we identified. We can and hopefully continue to improve around. We know that during the last drive-through of our city a couple weeks ago, we did have residents that did attend. We've been monitoring online activity around those who have indicated in the early days that they do plan to attend this event, and we've reached out to have dialogue with them, try and understand their plans, try and identify the safest way for them to be able to attend. Because as we've always indicated, the safety for everyone is our key priority. Public safety is our number one priority. So we're looking to work with those groups to make sure that we can provide the safest environment possible.
Thank you. I believe that's all our questions to the chief. Chief, so your verbal update to the community and city council will start tomorrow, I believe.
Mr. Chair, we've started today to provide information externally. We will continue that through the week as new information becomes available. We continue to work with our city partners. They also, from a traffic planning perspective, will be providing information through the week. So we're actively working on providing most up-to-date information we have as soon as we have it, so that everyone knows the circumstances that will exist this weekend.
And also, you mentioned to Member Leeper, there will be a police liaison between OPS and the local councillor in the court, the Councillor Fleury, McKinney, and Leeper and Ralston. I believe that's the area.
That's correct, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, on the chief's report that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is the item received? Thank you, Chief, and thank you, colleagues, for all the good questions. Item number 9. Oh, sorry. Yes, I forgot about Richard. How could I forget about Richard? Sorry about that. Richard, I guess I like you to stay with us. So National Capital Area Crime Stopper, this is the semi-annual report. And with us is Richard McMullen, is the president of National Capital Area Crime Stopper. Richard, before you start, I just want to say thank you for many years of your service to this organization. You really brought this organization to a higher level, and I really want to thank you for your leadership on this file. But I'll turn the floor to you now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thanks for those comments. This is my soon-to-be 10th year with Crime Stoppers in the city. 9 of those years I've served as the chair and president, and I'm proud to do it. And I'm very pleased to be in front of the board and our police partners this afternoon and share with you some of the steps we've taken to move forward through this. So I'll begin with just acknowledging that we've taken on a new board member in Kyle Burrows, who recently joined our team. We've also had some representation on the Ontario Association of Crime Stoppers through our coordinator, Constable Getz, and our vice president, Alan Burns, who both serve with us and now are serving with the Ontario Association. There's 37 other programs across Ontario that do the same type of work that we do in their regional and geographic areas. We've got one of the largest geographies, certainly in the province and if not the country, and do a very good job, I think, at providing anonymous tip reporting for the public to come forward. And I was pleased to see Chief Bell acknowledge us. And just to share with the board, we're a 24-hour anonymous service that guarantees the anonymity of the tipster. So as a result, we're not typically going to be here and trumpet our own success or share any direct success stories. We do share statistics about our program and the resolution of those tips. But unfortunately, we don't get into any of the specific details. And I can tell you they're a rich and colorful, full gamut of crimes that we're directly involved in solving. And that is a direct impact on our police service agencies and partners and the community that we serve in faster resolution of criminal activity, whether that's drug trafficking, human trafficking, illegal firearms, the full range of criminality. The program also launched earlier this year a new direct partnership with the Parliamentary Protective Service, where we now have the PPS engaged with us in tip sharing software and services. And that's a positive role, I think, for them and for us. Aside from our lack of in-person activities, we're excited to be out in the community again in May. The chair mentioned Police Week occurring across the province, and we're looking forward to be out in the community at various events, sharing information with the public on our anonymous tip reporting lines and options that the public can avail themselves of. We're also planning for our major fundraising event, and that's our annual golf tournament being held at Pineview Golf Club on July 21st. Again, this is a fun event to engage the supporters of Crime Stoppers and allows us to raise money. As most people will know, we don't get any direct taxpayer funding. It's all raised through volunteers and managed through volunteers, raised from the community, businesses, and other partners that support us. So if someone is curious about how to register or how they can support us, I'd encourage them to go to crimestoppers.ca and learn more about our upcoming tournament. For 37 years, this program has existed in this city, and we've had a significant partnership, mostly with our Ottawa police partners, but through the years, various police services at one point or another, and certainly other law enforcement agencies as well. And we're able to take significant numbers of tips. Since January of 2022, we've taken over 1,700 anonymous tips from the public that have directly impacted on criminal activity and helping law enforcement solve, resolve, and in some cases prevent crime from occurring. And that's positive. And I should note, when I started with the program, our annual tip number was somewhere in the 2,000 to 2,500. And that's, a decade ago. And now we're seeing numbers like 1,700 in the first quarter. That's a significant increase. And a lot of that is due to our publication and partnerships that we have, sharing information with the public, council, other forms of social media to get the message out that Crime Stoppers is a viable, safe, and secure method for reporting criminal activity in our community. I'd be happy to take any questions anyone has.
Well, thank you very much, Richard, for your service as of 10 years. I know it's been a while, but thank you for connecting again with myself and the new board member. I'm not sure. I believe, Madam Vice Chair, you have a question.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Hello, Richard.
Bonjour.
Good to see you again.
Nice to see you.
You came up, earlier on when we were talking about the bikers coming this weekend. I'm curious to know if you did receive some tips during the occupation.
We absolutely did,
You
for
did,
sure. And, that's something that, again, we can't get into the specific details of those tips, but I can tell you they're helpful for law enforcement. And, some of them are still being investigated, and we'll report back through those numbers as time permits.
Wonderful. Thank you. That's all
you.
for me.
Any other question for Mr. McMullen? No? Well, again, thank you, Richard, and please share with us the information about your fundraising. In the past, we managed to help promote it and help participate in it, so we would like to support you and help you as much as we
Yeah,
can.
we're looking forward to it. It's, again, worthwhile and fun.
Okay.
So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McMullen. So the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. Is the item received? Thank you. Now we can go to item number 9. Okay. Item number 9 is a sworn promotion process 2021 annual report. I have spoke earlier with Member Hansel, and I'm sure he's listening to us now. So, Chief, the report noticed various changes that have been made to the promotion process to help remove the potential for bias. And while these are positive steps, there is still that potential for systemic barriers in the system that disadvantage people of color and other groups. Can you or your staff please speak to any steps that the OPS has taken to have its promotional and developmental assessment evaluated for potential systemic barrier for certain disadvantaged group?
So thank you very much for the question, Chair. So, and I will happily pass it over to Superintendent Cartwright momentarily, but we'll also say I'm happy to see that the committee structure has been established, because we do have lots of information, including information around our new sworn promotional process that we look forward to bringing to different committees. So we'll be able to provide answers to your direct questions today, but also know that there are follow-up information that will be coming to the committees in very short order. So over to Superintendent Cartwright.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Chair, I brought Josh Abrams with me, who spearheaded some of the changes that have been made through the promotional process. And I'm going to pass the line to him, and you can speak directly with our subject matter expert. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Superintendent and Mr. Chair and the board. Thank you for having me. So this is a very interesting question, and it gets me kind of excited because I know there's been lots of changes that we've done already, and looking ahead to the next year, there's more to come, as you could see in the report that was provided. The inspiration for making changes in the first place actually came from a process that we ran back in 2018. where we had over 100 of our constables participate in a sergeant's process. During that process, we had a very in-depth debrief period with the people that participated, where they were very candid about all of the things that we needed to work on. And it was clear from that feedback that more needed to be done. To give you an idea, some of the themes that they touched upon was that the process needed to be more fair, open, consistent, transparent, that we needed to remove bias from the testing phases and interview phases that we were putting our members through. People were being assessed using a very outdated competency model that's close to 15 years old, as well as once members are promoted, that there is very little support for them to get the skills they need to be effective and successful in their new roles or at their new rank. And so as such, in 2019, we took that feedback and made some pretty significant changes to that we piloted in regards to our staff sergeants and inspectors promotional processes. Some of those changes included introducing a blind scoring for assessors. And that what that means is that assessors did not know who they were scoring. We removed any identifiers, which was very effective and well received, as well as reducing the amount of panel members that participated in the process and having blind calibration at the end of each interview day to ensure that we're scoring members during the interview process the same way. So those processes in 2019 were extremely successful. For the first time in several years, we had 0 complaints, which says a lot. And so that really fueled our passion and motivation for presenting the idea for a full promotions review. But we knew that before we could just tackle promotions, there were some foundational pieces that we needed to fix first. So in 2020, we proposed a new talent development strategy. It's a 3-phase strategy. And in phase 1, that's where things like our new universal competencies were inspired from. So we have a set of 3 new universal competencies that were approved and introduced to our members last year. Those didn't come overnight. There is significant consultation with our members, so those providing services, as well as from the community, those receiving services, on what they expect from our members and what they expect in a process for assessing and promoting members to ensure it's barrier-free. And so we worked with our partners in action, connections, the Community Equity Council, our members, as well as other in-person and online events to get the best data to be able to build the competencies that we needed the most. As part of that large initiative, those competencies were finalized in 2020. And then we were able to present what we have in the board report here for you this evening, which is our new framework for promotions. As you can see, it's not like we did it before. It's not a staffing process. Staffing process have the ability to have lots of bias and many systemic barriers that are frankly out of our control. And so we are moving towards a leadership development program, which will allow all members who wish to be developed and get considered for future promotion to enroll virtually barrier-free. And they'll get the skills they need in order to get promoted. If they're successful in that program, then they will be able to be placed and promoted based on skills for the positions that suit them the most. And so it's really like a learning for everyone kind of mentality. There's other things that we're doing that I'd be happy to come back and present on to help us democratize learning. It's a very exciting time for us. But in that new promotional process, we'll be working very closely as well with our RVI section to ensure that we're applying an EDI lens toolkit to ensure we're selecting and promoting the right people with no bias.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Abraham, for that explanation. Obviously, I took the question from Member Henschel, but also I spoke with him in a little bit more detail, and I'm glad you have mentioned the other group you're working with, whether the community safety, the Community Equity Council and other partner, because I think that was very important to know the level of engagement we have around this file. What I would like to take away from this we're gonna receive this, and Member Henschel obviously will be with us in the future, but I would like you to come now. We have committee, maybe HR committee can host you for an event, you and Superintendent Cartwright, and just come in, because there's a new board, and I remember this was very important in the past, and we came a long way from where we were before. But in some small organization, I'm sure Mr. Ibrahim, you will agree, even without the names, you still know who we are talking about sometimes. So I'm glad you have lay out all the in detail, but I would like to see us having a presentation from you in a committee setting where we are a little bit more relaxed, have more time to ask you some question and go by some examples. So I'd really appreciate if you take our offer for future and appear on the front of our committee, if it's our committee, because I'm on that committee now. So, okay, Member Fakran, go ahead, Salim.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question, and that's related to a footnote here you have. It says, further work is required to develop and incorporate diversity data and targets into the promotional model. So I'm wondering if you could speak to that point. And I will ask another question while I have the floor is, actually, let's take that one and then I'll come back if I have the other one.
Yeah, so absolutely. I think, as I just mentioned a few moments ago, part of our release of the new promotional process needs to incorporate some of the best practices coming out of our respectful workplace, our respect values and inclusion partners internally. Well, I'm personally not a subject matter expert in that area, but we do need to start looking at collecting things like diversity stats to see where some of the gaps are internally. At this moment, we have some constraints in terms of the availability of data that we can provide to help us to make decisions that encourage, employment equity and as well as targets internally. I would like to see that conversation had and incorporated in terms of our future promotional process. But as it stands right now, the leadership development program is really barrier-free, with the exception of a very minimal experience requirement. We want as many people as possible to be able to enroll into the program and incorporate things like blind scoring to ensure that we have the most diverse group of promotees that reflect the community that we serve. But I'll take that as an action item to be able to work closer with our internal partners to make sure that we can tackle that footnote that you mentioned.
I will follow up in terms of the leadership development program. I'm very supportive of such programs. The question I have is it an automatic promotion to once you've graduated from that program, or is it another application process that individuals have to go through?
That's a great question. So it's currently in development right now. So everything's on the table. But our plan is that once members go through the leadership development program, they're then assessed by a promotion selection board, which we hope to involve members of the community as well. And that board will have the privilege of identifying members with high leadership potential. Those who are identified will then be, we'll be working closely with our internal staffing teams to be able to place people into the positions that suit their skill set the best. So they won't have to reapply for anything, but they will be placed, as opposed to right now where they're placed based on rank on a promotional list. Now we'll have the ability to place people where their skills suit them the most and would be the most valuable for the organization and the community.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If I can just add to Mr. Chair to
Yes, go ahead.
your first question, member. In regards to DDI, as you see, all the work that's gone since 2018, 2019, it's a continuous improvement, including development of the RVI directorate. That particularly point that you pointed out is our own realization as an organization that needs to be at the forefront. So yes, when it comes to promotions, we do look at the demographic needs, state of the organization, also the needs operation of the organization, and that's taken into consideration and being presented for individuals who are deemed qualified for promotion.
Yeah, it's essentially a business case model, right? In fact, you want a police service that reflects society.
Absolutely.
And so it's a really a business case that you're presenting and putting forward.
It's
to
not only
meet
about
that.
representing the community at the constable level. It's making sure that there's representation throughout the ranks. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Fikran, and thank you, Cartwright. Member Kerr, you still have questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. More of just a comment. One of the things I've learned in education and healthcare settings is that the hardest part of leadership is the mentoring afterwards. So they're in the new position, and then who mentors them? Because that's a staffing issue. That's a cost, where you have to have people paired up with other people on their regular time. It's not off the side of your desk kind of thing. So, I mean, if we're going to have a presentation, Chair El-Shantiri, then I would like to hear more about that, because I think that is one of the most challenging parts. That's just really a comment. I don't know if you agree with me, but I'd like to see that when you have your presentation.
I'm happy to address it now, Mr. Chair, but also happy to come for a secondary visit to talk more about it either way. If you'll allow me.
Go ahead.
So absolutely. That was one of the biggest comments that we received, was that after members were promoted, that there was very little supports for them. So we have a few things under development right now. We do have a mentorship program that is currently being piloted internally. We've run 2 pilots, and our intent is that in 2023, that every member within the service will have access to a mentor should they feel they need to do so. And our hope is that members who enrolled in the leadership development program for promotion specifically, at the least, would be automatically paired up with a mentor upon promotion or during the leadership development program. So that's definitely something we're passionate about and that we're exploring right now. And I would be happy to get some of your ideas or feedback based on your experiences to help us make it the best mentorship program ever.
Sounds good. You're going to be spending some time on the committee from the sound of it. So, Madame Beliquet, go ahead.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. I also had noted that footnote. I was going to ask you about it as well. I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm seeing that we promoted 5 females and 15 males. When you look at the totals at the end, it's less than half that are represented by female officers. Can you perhaps tell us what might be the issue there? And the other question that I have, if somebody applies for the leadership program and they don't succeed, what happens to them? Thank you.
So thank you for your question. And you're right, it's about 23% that was promoted and that we have representation of right now, even at certain ranks. It's usually around 20 to 25%. There's various reasons that we could attest to that. It's an interesting process the way it is right now. Members participate, and then they're ranked on a list. And then depending on how many vacancies we have at the time, then a certain number of people from the list are then promoted in rank order. So depending on where females land in that particular rank, they may or may not be promoted, and that skews the results in a way. At the same time, we see that there's a lack of interest in female applicants as well too, for various reasons. So there's a number of things that we're doing, and that's why the leadership development program we're hoping will be barrier-free, and that people are automatically enrolled through performance conversations that they have with their managers, and they don't have to contemplate or worry about what will happen if they do or don't go through. They'll have access to things like informal mentors and formal mentors along the way to help them. And we're doing a lot of work right now as well too with our strategic partnerships group to make improvements to the learning and development content that we have, to encourage things like diversity, safety in the workplace, and how we can promote things like harassment, violent-free workplace to ensure that everyone feels safe to compete and participate in future staffing processes even, because believe it or not, there is a correlation between the two things.
I believe you for sure. I'm also curious about police officers who resign. I don't know if this is part of your data, but I understand that there are resignations and they've started, and some police officers have been with the service for just a couple of years and they're resigning. I'm wondering, do you take the time to discuss why a police officer decides to resign? And is this something that's part of your study?
If I may answer that question, Mr. Chair.
Please go ahead.
Madame Valiquette, bonsoir. As you know, the issue of gender has always been very high from my time for recruiting, having spoken to you. We do see members resigning, as you do say. Members are provided an opportunity to provide some feedback. Having done an internal study on the percentage of why people retire, we do not have that data. But anecdotally from an individual who does see the resignations or retirements, we do see a tendency where we used to hire police officers, maybe in my generation, where we fully expected to spend 30 years in policing. If I can say from the presentation to the young recruits that's been happening, if you were to stand before them and to say that you're going to be here for 30 years, you get a stare, you get this look. It's a different expectation. So as much as we believe this is a very important profession, behold, individuals are coming into the profession with different mindset. Maybe that's 10 years, maybe that's 15 years. It's definitely not the mindset of coming to a profession for 30 years. So we do see individuals and anecdotally leaving our profession earlier than that time. Do we have a serious retention issue? No, but it's something that we need to, as we hire a new generation, have different expectation. And that goes to everything from retention, but also to recruitment. So those are some of the pressures that we do see in recruitment. And your other issue that you identify in regards to gender, very well, where when we are hiring, what you identify as a barrier, okay? Why, when Josh spoke to lack of applicants, that's something that we need to look at, is if we do have a certain percentage of female applicants who are eligible for promotion, why are they not participating? Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's something that needs to be dealt with. But clearly what Josh has identified, that it's promotion up to the rank of staff sergeants purely on the scoring level. So we do promote everybody who does achieve that score.
Thank you. I'm fascinated by this and I look forward to your next presentation. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, and thank you to all board members and to Josh and Superintendent Cartwright. Yes, maybe we can remind the board member also. There's a study by Dr. Linda Duxbury about why people don't stay in police and like their predecessor used to stay or as long. So I think that's a study. It sheds some light on and all the issues we're talking about today. But for today, we can receive this report and expect to come back at future to HR committee. So on the item receive. Thank you. Item number 11, I believe, was held by member Leeper.
Thanks, Chair. And I just wanted to ask, I'm not conversant with the police budget in any sort of depth yet. So I did read the numbers. You know, I see you're making progress on finding efficiencies, but I'm just wondering, is it possible for you to make any kind of a forecast at this point for how you might end the year?
Hi, thank you for your question. So Q1, both here and I've come in from the province, is really very preliminary, and it's meant to, you know, to point out some of the pressures that we see and we know will materialize, and also some of the risks that we want to, you know, track carefully, but aren't sure whether they will actually materialize. So for us, this year, it's, you know, there are a number of things, you know, that are on our radar that are a little bit different from previous years. I will remind you, you probably don't know from last year, unless you've looked at the budget recently, but even last year we were tracking, I think, $21 million in pressures throughout the year. And we were, you know, some of those pressures we realized, and we were able to manage through, you know, some management interventions, some vacancies, you know, recruitment that didn't happen, you know, so it freed up some salary and wage dollars, that kind of thing. So we were able to more or less balance, but we still ended up with a pressure at the end of the year, which we did offset, you know, with the city's, you know, help in terms of figuring out a strategy for that. So it's not unusual, you know, to see this in Q1. You know, I don't have a crystal ball. We're going to really do our best. So we've started out the year already with the 7.05 expectation that we would find, those efficiencies. So we are, working on that. So that's something we have to find in year, and then that's a base reduction in the out years as well. So those are reductions that we need to find that will carry forward, as well as some elimination of FTEs. And I think we've found about 2 million of that so far. So it's not a lot, but we have ideas, for a large amount of that. We have pressures related to demonstrations and events, as you know. Some of those pressures, such as the ones from the February demonstration, will be offset through our federal, agreements. And we've been advised that, that will happen. So that is a risk that we're tracking because we aren't required to provide that till July 2022 to the beds. In terms of the final number. So that's not likely going to materialize as a risk, but we still need to kind of track that. But there are risks. For example, the St. Patrick's Day, because of the need to, really carefully plan and deploy officers for all of our events going forward. I think the previous St. Patrick's Day, for example, cost $50,000, and this year it costs $300,000. So again, it's overtime. And so those are, risks that we have some funds already baked in the budget to cover that. But if it's significantly over, we wouldn't have those funds. So, it's just a matter of balancing those. So there's also a couple of other things. The Senior Officers Association is in negotiations, and there's some potential forecast for that was planned for, but we don't know how that will turn out. So those, again, different risks. So I hope that paints a bit of a picture. So I would just say Q1 is really early, and there's a lot on our plate, and we're doing we've really rolled up our sleeves and are kind of diving in line by line on anything we can find on the efficiency piece. But I think the chief would probably say the cupboards are getting pretty bare, and we are managing several risks. So I think Q2 will start to paint a better picture on kind of where we're heading towards year end.
Okay, it's when I look at the Q1 numbers, it's clear it's difficult. It's a challenging budget to try to meet. One of the items I'm not sure whether to be concerned about is the job classification risk. You're in an exercise right now of potentially having to reclassify according to some criteria. What is the potential magnitude of that pressure?
Yeah, I could probably turn that over to my acting finance director for some details there. I would say last year that materialized as quite a significant pressure for us because there was a large group of employees. So it was one or two classifications they were looking at, but there were many people in those classifications. So this year, I think there are several, but they don't impact as many people. So I think it's under $500,000. No, go ahead. That's why you're here.
Thanks, Blair, and thanks for the question. Member Leeper, we are anticipating in the $3 million to $5 million range would be pressure for the job evaluation piece. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I was thinking the SOA was under 500,000. Sorry about that.
No, the classification, that 3 to 5 million is obviously that's pretty significant. So we'll keep an eye on those Q2 numbers. Thanks for the additional color.
Thank you, Member Curry. You have a question about this?
Yeah, I actually have a few, so I don't want to take them all if other people have them. So I don't know if it's just that I can't hear as well in this room here, but I just was your explanation for why we are at first quarter, we're not at 25% of spending. We're at, in some cases, 42, 52.5. Is that generally what you were saying? That I couldn't actually hear it that well. I'm sorry if I'm asking you the same question again. But when I look at the Q1 numbers and the percentage spent, I expect to see sort of 25%. However, I know that's not always the case, that, you spend exactly 25% in the first quarter and 50 in the second. But was that exactly what Councillor Leeper just asked?
No, that's a different question. I think it's a little more detailed of a question. So I had the same question when I looked at those spreadsheets, because you would be thinking you'd be in around the 20 to 25% spend range. There is a corporate account line in there that Jonathan can point you to, and that there's funds that have not been distributed yet to those other line items. So that's the explanation, but he can give you a little more detail on that.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Member Curry. And just to speak, so there's two pieces to that. The first one, as an overall, we are showing 27% spent when you would expect to see 25%. The reason for that is we have in our books to date, or by the end of Q1, we had about 5.4 million related to the convoy specifically. So that, if I remove that 5.4 million, my percentage is down to just over 25, about 25.6% is what you would see at the end of March 31st, which is more in line with what we've had year over year. We're about, last year we're 25.3, the year before we're at 26, so all within that range. So that's why on an overall basis, we're showing at a higher percentage of 27.2. Getting into the directorate specific examples, I believe you're looking at information at 45%. So that one specifically, why we're so over is because we had the job evaluation settlement for our comms clerks, and they received that significant retro pay all within Q1 in that directorate. The offsetting credit that Blair mentioned is in our corporate account. So we're working our way through allocating that credit to those various directorates that are impacted. So that will be rectified within Q2 for those directorate specific variances.
Okay, and just to ask the very specific number, can you give me an explanation for the 347.7% item there for legal services directed all revenues and recoveries?
So they've actually overachieved their revenue base for the first quarter. So it's a good variance.
Yep.
But I don't have the specifics for that, so I'd have to take that one away.
Okay, that's fine. I just have other questions in terms of what the pressures were. So what we are looking at is that we have a reduced, when I circle this here, reduced recovery from policing contracts at the airport. My limited understanding of that is that that was something that we thought was actually going to be bringing in revenue and potentially now isn't. And I'm just wondering, I thought there was a chance we could actually get out of that contract if it wasn't bringing in revenue.
So thank you for that. So as it relates specifically to the airport contract, due to COVID and due to the pandemic and decreases in traveling, decreases in revenue that the airport was seeing, we've worked with them over the last 2 years, the airport authority, to look at what is the right policing response and charging appropriately for that. What you will see over the next, what they anticipate year to 2 years, is an increase and back to normal levels in terms of revenue recovery in that area as we apply more resources. So the important thing to remember in that is that isn't, although we do claim administrative fees, that isn't an actual revenue generating contract. We supply officers. Those officers, we recoup their costs for. We also recoup costs for vehicles, office space, the different sundry things that a police officer needs. So we do not lose money on it. We've just gone through that evaluation with the airport authority, and we will continue to increase our billing for that as we apply more resources towards it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks. The other one was the false alarm revenue. I understood that we were going to start or be able to charge the fire alarm companies themselves, so that, there wasn't this sort of two-tiered policing model where people that could afford to have alarm systems in their house got police services costs for free, I gather, but that we could charge the alarm company. Do we have an update on that? Which seems to me to be a good idea.
Sorry, we haven't been involved in looking at charging the alarm companies. That hasn't been something that we've been following through on or not following up on. It's actually news to me. I will go back and take a look at any work that we had done around that. It hasn't occurred to my knowledge. What I can say is it costs considerable amount of money for us to respond to those calls for service. And when they're false, we do level a fine against them. That is to the homeowner.
Yeah, I think I just remember reading something about this where it was smarter though to level the fine against the fire alarm company, because then they start to make different decisions about how they do their business because they get charged instead of the homeowner. However, I mean, you can follow up on that. And the last one I just was going to ask about was the red light cameras. Why is it that our revenue, I mean, I understand they're hefty fines, but is it just COVID? And can you maybe explain that to me? Why would it be reduced now?
Yes, it's just simply due to the COVID for the last 2 years, where we just haven't had the number of people traveling and having the red light tickets. I don't think there's anything more to it than that.
Okay, when I look at the stats about speeding, and I just think, you know, sometimes people are speeding, they go through red lights, but the reason it doesn't follow that way. It is just that there's reduced people on the roads.
Yeah, so there's an important nuance to that as well, though. The revenue directly from those tickets is not received by the police service. When we lay, an automated red light ticket, an automated speed enforcement ticket, a regular provincial offenses notice that the police service lays against somebody is not revenue that we see as an organization. What you're seeing there is an agreement that we've reached with the city for them to provide us a portion of that revenue to invest in our operations, but that's just as an agreement between the city. We did modify that as their red light camera revenues went down. They identified that they were not able to provide us as much money around that, but it is not a case where as soon as somebody drives through a red light, the police service gets that revenue.
Okay, thank you for that. I have a capital budget question. If someone else has other questions on more operational, then I can come back.
Go ahead. I mean,
just the building, the south, whatever it's called, this building in the south is on hold. And, you know, from my tours, I'm sad to hear that. I think a new building would be nice. However, there's still, if the budget's on hold, I noticed there was 11 million spent though still, even though it's on pause. And I just wondered what the 11 million was about.
Thanks for the question. And that 11 million was for the design of the facility. And I can, our director of facilities can come and elaborate on that, but that was the majority of the cost. Jay, I'll let you top that up.
Yes, thank you for the question. The 11 million, like John said, was related to the design of the building. So the first two phases of the building are completely designed, and we're right now tender ready should that decision be made to tender that project.
So, but there are increased construction costs. Are we locked in for the amount that's in this document, or is this a pause because we may not be able to afford to do this now?
So the 11 million is spent to date on this project from inception.
Yes, but I guess my question here is about the larger project. It says that it's on pause, but does that mean that because increased costs, we may not do it at all? It may be significantly paused?
So that is, sorry, I'll jump in there, Jay. So that's a conversation that we absolutely need to have with this police services board. As we've gone through the last number of years, we've had stops and starts around planning. We've had a few changes in directions in how we were going to approach a south building. We do believe that we are actually getting closer between our city partners and ourselves to identifying exactly what is the needs of the city in terms of a community safety building and how do we move ahead on that. So I think that's a discussion that we're actively looking to prepare and bring back to the board, because that is ultimately direction that we will contribute to, but direction we will take from this board in terms of how we proceed in that area.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad we started it here. I'll look forward to it.
Well, just because you started now, I have to explain to you. the South End facility itself, we just met with the executive team to get an update on what you're just asking about how much we spent to date, what's happening, where we're going. Because also there's another issue, and I don't want to bug this report with it because we have to come back to you as a committee, is about the development charge we'll be collecting for that building. Because in my role as a chair in the past, I directed all the money from the to be collected for the emergency services to go to policing, because if it's spread between fire, police, and paramedic, it's going to take you longer to collect that money. So we made a conscious decision to take it all toward policing, but unfortunately nothing happened in the last few years, pandemic and different direction with the board, whatever it is. So I'm trying to get myself up to speed on this. At the same time, we're going to bring it to a committee. But right now, I believe the CAO, myself, and the chief, we have a meeting with the treasurer. I believe somebody's setting up that meeting so we can go back through the numbers and start all over, basically. Am I correct? There's a meeting supposed to be scheduled?
Chair, we have a meeting internally set up with the city next week to really look at it in detail. And then there's going to be a meeting set up with yourself and the right city officials, and then try to look at what's the best stream forward coming back to the board.
And the board, when you say we're going to bring to committee first, right? Like to the finance committee to go in detail about this report. And that would where Member Curry can ask all those detailed questions, because there's a lot of budget item that will screw the whole compensation if we add it right now. I'm hoping you agree with me, especially with some of the money being borrowed for the last budget so we don't want to get into that right now, right? Okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I really want to know about the 11 million, and the rest of it, I'll look forward to.
So, you know, the 11 million have been spent on a design. And if you don't do nothing, you can kiss them goodbye. And if you do something, well, you can still salvage those $11.5 million for the South End. Simple time. Okay. So that was item 11 in financial status report, first quarter. So the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report. Oh, you have
Sorry,
more
Chair.
questions?
I have just a real quick one. I just wanted to get back to the red light questions, Chief. You said that the city gets a portion and gives you a portion, right, to the service from the tickets that are issued because of red light.
The city gets all of it, and through agreements that we have, they've allocated a portion of the revenue they receive to us.
Okay. Can you explain why that is? Is it because they're the ones that install the lights and they own the equipment?
No, just the way the funding structures work within the province, the legislation around it. Police services don't recoup money from provincial offenses notices. They go to the city of jurisdiction. So that's why the city of Ottawa would get those revenues.
Okay. Thank you. That's all.
Well, I think Dave can explain it a little bit more. Go ahead. Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr. Chair, under an agreement entered into between municipalities and the province shortly after 2001, so shortly after amalgamation here, the municipalities assumed responsibility for prosecution of provincial offenses. And in exchange for that, to help fund some of the downloading that was taking place at the time, municipalities became entitled to collect and retain the fine revenue from all what we call Part 1 offenses. So most of your ticketable offenses, a portion of that we remit back to the province for its own costs and for the victim fine surcharge. And so that's how that money flows to the city through that agreement with the Ministry of the Attorney General.
Thank you very much. So on the item received, thank you. Item number 12, I believe Member Curry or Leaper hold this item, the complaint report, part 5. Jeff, oh, that was Kathy. Okay. Item number 12, complaint report, part 5, police service.
Yeah. So, and I feel like this was in the media today, you know, that there were so many complaints that we received over the convoy, and so many of them were listed as not They weren't dealing with them because they were not in the public interest. And I guess I just think the community deserves to understand what that means, not in the public interest, because it sounds dismissive. I understand that there's a reason. And I just think the community, it would be helpful for people to understand, what does that mean that looking into something is really not in the public interest when the community thinks it's in their public interest?
So that would be something that we could follow up with in terms of soliciting the OIPRD to see if they would provide an overview of that. We don't actually administer these complaints. We don't actually classify them. That's done by the OIPRD. So either ourselves or the board specifically, and I'm not sure, I would defer to Mr. White on who would be most appropriate to do that, could reach out to the OIPRD to get that sort of overview. But that's not something that we would be able to provide.
Thank you, because I understand that there's a test, like they look at the issue and it does not meet a criteria to be in the public interest, or it costs more money than it would ever generate, or there isn't enough information. But I think the community deserves just to understand what that means, so it doesn't sound as if they just thought, nobody cares what you think,
Mr. White, should you elaborate a little bit on OIPRD, or should I?
Mr. Chair, obviously, I can't purport to speak on behalf of the OIPRD with respect to an assessment of, for example, matters, other kinds of legal matters as to whether they are or whether they are not in the public interest to proceed. Certainly, my office can reach out to the OIPRD if they have some parameters around their test. But I think you've kind of encapsulated it. It may be appreciated that the OIPRD is kind of well schooled in the policing context and things like the extent of discretion that every officer has in terms of laying charges and those kinds of things. It may be that on review of a complaint, the OIPRD examines it and determines that even on its face, the conduct complained of is not a departure from the expectations of policing, or does not constitute misconduct under the code of conduct. It may also be that it is of such, as you say, of such a minor nature that even if it is demonstrated to be accurate, that the resources that would go into investigating it through either the OIPRD itself, or if it's remitted back to the OPS or another policing agency, are such that the benefit that might be derived from that and from answering that is far outweighed by the overall cost in terms of resources to examine that, particularly if it's not an issue that relates specifically to obviously clear misconduct.
Thank you for that.
Any other question on this item? Member Leeper?
Thanks. So 70 of the complaints were screened in, consolidated under two themes. 5 of them have been collected as differential treatment complaints during the occupation, and 65 of those have been consolidated as failure to take action. So those will be investigated. I'm just wondering, what is the mechanism for that investigation? The report notes that that will be informed by the inquiries, but is that something that the board is expected to deal with, or how does OPS respond to those as screened in complaints?
So I'm going to turn that question over to Inspector Hugh O'Toole, who will be able to answer that for us.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. Thank you for inviting me to speak today. So, Councillor Leeper, I'll just ask you if you could please repeat the question for me.
There's 2 categories of complaints that, if I understand the report properly, and I might not have been screened in. 65 complaints on the question of failure to take action were screened in, and as a consolidated complaint, and 5 complaints with respect to differential treatment during the occupation were screened in. My understanding from the report is that that will have to be investigated somehow. Is it OPS's responsibility to provide a response to those consolidated complaints?
Yes, Councillor. It is our responsibility to fully investigate those as directed by the OAPRD and under the legislation with a policy or service complaint. We report our findings here to the board. Noted that there are other layers of review underway, the Federal Emergencies Act, the AG. To the extent that those will inform our response, it remains to be seen. I mean, our investigation is independent, but if everyone is ultimately investigating the same thing and drawing similar conclusions or wrestling with the same issues, we sort of have an understanding with the OPRD that we'll continue to work with their legal department to work through those issues to make sure that it's done as expeditiously as possible, but also as thoroughly and as independently as possible.
Okay, so with respect, for example, to the 65 public complaints, with respect to the police failing to take action during the occupation, the police will presumably be giving this board a response to those complaints that will likely restate some of what, for example, the Auditor General finds.
Yeah, I think we can anticipate some overlap, but our section professional standards will, as directed by the OAPRD, investigate and report the findings to this board.
Okay. The board has asked the Ontario Civilian Police Commission to investigate the board and the service with respect to the same complaints, essentially. Do we know if the OCPC has any intention of responding to that request by the board?
So I would refer that to Mr. White.
Chair, I'm not aware that the board has received any response yet from the OCPC with respect to that request.
My understanding is it's a bit of a black hole over there. Okay. Thank you very much for that. I had a second question stemming from one of the complaints, which was the police response to the firearm incident at the Rideau Center that was happening, I think, during the occupation. There was a portion of the complaint that said it was an over-the-top response, and the director has chosen not to investigate that. And I understand why. I mean, these responses can be pretty intimidating to people, but I know the police respond to firearm calls in a very aggressive way. But the other part of the complaint was that workers of the Rideau Center did not know, and customers did not know where to go when they were being evacuated. Has there been any subsequent follow-up with the Rideau Center to talk about how that evacuation went and whether there might be changes necessary in future?
So where I'll start with that is we do respond to firearm calls as serious. I don't know that I would necessarily categorize it as aggressive, but we do respond in a most serious way to be equal and commensurate to the threat that we're receiving. In terms of specifically that incident and any follow-up with the Rideau Center, we have had conversations with the Rideau Center shortly following that. In fact, I met with the leadership of it the following day. And we continue to have ongoing conversations about how we integrate our response with them as we move ahead. That's something specifically around this case that I'll flag through Deputy Burnett with our neighborhood resource teams, and we'll look to make sure that we do actively follow up and report back to you on that.
I'd be interested in finding out how you propose, mustering and things like that for people, because it is obviously a big potential target, and I'd like to know that there are some plans for how to deal with future threats of this sort. So I appreciate that. Chair, thank you. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you very much, Member Leeper. So I believe that the Ottawa Police Service Board received this report for information. This item received.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Inspector, maybe one question we were asked, the chief and I outside through the media, and maybe you can take a minute to explain it. They had asked us if OIPRD screen those complaint and decide do nothing or do more or do less, what's the next level for the complainant? Like, do they have option? And I do believe there is an option, and they have to go through judicial review.
Yes, no, that's a fair question. If a complaint is screened out, there is complainants can ask for a review by the OIPRD. I believe I included the review statistics for Q1. There was 2, although I can state pretty confidently that any requests for review over convoy related complaints haven't quite caught up to our reporting cycle, which is limited to Q1. But typically, a complainant is issued a letter with the results, and on the cover letter, it lays out the instructions for them to seek review by the OIPRD of the decision. If they're dissatisfied with the review by the OIPRD, they can further make a complaint to the board's complaints subcommittee. I think we had 1 last year, but those are certainly very infrequent.
Or they can go to the court, isn't it? Like there's a judicial review higher than the ORPD.
We did. There was a recent change in the legislation last year where they can seek review by the Ontario Court of Justice.
Yes.
But we haven't seen that as of yet.
No. Okay. We will thank you very much. No, because that question was asked from the media. What else a choice that people can have to complain it, and I think the chief tried to explain it, and I did as well. But
so, Mr. Chair, what I can suggest is with the new committee structure that we've struck, the first complaints committee meeting that we have, we will bring forward an overview, and I think we'll work with Mr. White and his team to provide an overview of the complaints process, the board's role within the complaints process, and the other oversight bodies that exist and how we all work together. So we will bring that forward to you at the first complaints committee meeting.
yeah, I like that. I think that will be helpful to all of us. All right, so folks, I believe that was our last item. Any other business? Our next board meeting will take place on Monday, May 30. Can I have a motion for adjournment? So move. Thank you very much, and thank you for the folks who's been watching us. And Member Henschel, I hope you're happy you got your question asked and created quite a bit of debate. So enjoy your staying away. Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.